Hey friends, it's Jimmy with a quick reminder to hit the like and subscribe buttons and ding that notification bell. Also, don't forget to drop a quick comment saying what you're doing or where you're listening from. Imagine walking into your home one morning to find an empty room, realizing that a loved one, a vulnerable person who can't navigate the world alone, has slipped away into the night. That startling discovery marked the beginning of an agonizing mystery that continues to define the disappearance of Jonathan Hoang. On Sunday evening, March 30th, 2025, in Arlington, Washington, 21-year-old Jonathan Hoang's life appeared stable and routine. He reportedly said goodnight to his father at approximately 7:30 that night, an ordinary end to an ordinary day. His family believed that he would simply be spending his night in his room before falling asleep as usual. However, sometime between that evening exchange and the following morning at 6:40, when his mother attempted to wake him for school, Jonathan vanished. The immediate mystery surrounding his departure was characterized by a profound contradiction. He abandoned items essential for his comfort and survival, yet took an item that implied preparation or outside contact. When authorities were called to report him missing on Monday morning, March 31st, they quickly established the weird circumstances of his exit. Jonathan left behind his cell phone, his money, his wallet, and his medication. Most critically, he left his preferred hooded jacket and his shoes. Jonathan, who is autistic, had a strict personal routine, and his family noted he never left home without this specific jacket. Curiously, though, he took his AirPods and his iPad, items that he only ever took on long car trips or plane rides. These details immediately presented a complex picture. Leaving essential comfort items suggested a hurried, unplanned exit where he expected a quick return. But taking a device he used for a digital connection to the world suggested he may have been communicating with someone. This inherent conflict meant the investigation needed to immediately prioritize the possibility of third-party involvement, rather than merely treating the event as a self-directed departure. Jonathan is a vulnerable young adult whose life and capabilities were central to assessing the urgency of his disappearance. Though 21 years old, he had significant cognitive issues due to autism, requiring assistance and supervision. Notably, his family describes him as having an extremely trusting personality, and in essence believing that everyone is good. Disturbingly, someone may have taken advantage of this fact to abduct him. According to his parents, he isn't capable of independent travel or navigating his way back home. Until his disappearance, he had been enrolled in an extended high school transition program, further illustrating his dependence on structure and established support systems. Jonathan's life was defined by rigid structure and habitual routines. He maintained extremely strict and rigid hygiene patterns and meticulously followed typical known paths when taking walks. Though he did indeed like going for walks, he never did so in the evening hours. His sudden, late-night deviation from his routine was a definitive red flag. These immediate facts concerning his complex medical needs and uncharacteristic departure should have signaled instant danger. Following the missing persons report, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office immediately launched an intensive search and rescue operation. This initial search, spanning 6 days and involving a massive mobilization of resources, demonstrated a significant commitment to locating Jonathan in the immediate area. The scale of the effort was extensive, deploying over 150 searchers, professional trackers, and scent dogs drawn from multiple counties. They also called in specialized crews experienced in difficult alpine terrain. The agency's air assets were also utilized, including drones and helicopters equipped with infrared cameras. Over the 6-day period, authorities amassed thousands of man-hours dedicated entirely to combing the immediate vicinity of his home and the surrounding areas. On April 7th, after determining the search had exhausted all immediate leads in the area, The authorities suspended the on-the-ground operations. Specialized canines were brought back into the neighborhood on April 10th, but they too gave no indications. The intensive nature of the search, resulting in zero physical evidence found in the Arlington area, strongly suggests Jonathan didn't simply wander off and become lost locally. This outcome instead bolstered the hypothesis that Jonathan was quickly relocated, possibly picked up by a vehicle soon after leaving his house. This abduction may have looked entirely routine to anyone who witnessed it, especially given Jonathan's extremely trusting nature. This would explain why there was no evidence of him whatsoever found within the search and rescue perimeter. Detectives reported performing a thorough digital analysis of Jonathan's known electronic devices, including his computer and cell phone. They worked with major technology companies like Google, Microsoft, and Apple to trace his digital whereabouts. Disturbingly, their conclusion was that no electronic activity on Jonathan's accounts had been detected since the time he was reported missing. Upon completing their digital investigation, they determined that there was no evidence of foul play whatsoever, though the nature of the findings weren't released. This finding drew criticism from his family, who questioned how thorough the digital portion of the investigation had been. This may also be a good time to mention that the authorities seem to take a different view of Jonathan's functional capabilities than his family. While his family describes him as having the abilities of a 10-year-old, the authorities seem to view him as much more highly functioning. This naturally could be problematic if they found evidence that he was, in essence, groomed into leaving. Months after the comprehensive search had been suspended and the official investigation appeared to stall, a major development occurred that challenged the initial findings. There was a highly significant potential sighting 40 miles away from Arlington. The family was alerted to security footage, which they validated as likely showing Jonathan in the South Juanita neighborhood of Kirkland, Washington. This alleged sighting occurred late on the evening of June 23rd, months after he had vanished. Footage captured from 3 different homes in the same general area, taken between 11 p.m. and midnight, appeared to show the missing man. While the individual in the footage seemed disoriented, the most consequential observation was that he appeared clean and well put together. This detail became the linchpin of the family's ongoing abduction theory. They argue compellingly that an autistic adult with Jonathan's cognitive abilities and complex needs couldn't have maintained such a neat appearance. If he had merely wandered off, the elements, lack of proper hygiene, and lack of routine care would have left him visibly deteriorated. Consequently, the visual evidence of the Kirkland sighting strongly reinforces the hypothesis that Jonathan wasn't alone during those months. In my view, the most troubling element of this case is the growing likelihood that Jonathan is being held in captivity by someone. The clean and well-kept appearance of the person believed to be him in the Kirkland footage directly contradicts every reasonable expectation for a vulnerable adult. It suggests shelter and a certain base level of care being provided, but not the kind given by his loving family. Instead, it points toward an environment where someone else is controlling access to resources and monitoring his movements. That possibility makes me question whether the digital forensic work in this investigation was truly as exhaustive as authorities claimed. We're told that detectives analyzed his devices and worked with major tech companies, yet their conclusion was that no digital activity existed and no foul play could be inferred. But absence of activity isn't proof of absence of a digital trail, and there may have been more that wasn't covered. For instance, he may have met his abductor through an online game, and the conversations may have taken place there rather than through text messages or something like Discord. At any rate, I personally believe that on the night he was seen on surveillance, he may have briefly escaped from his captor or captors. This is pure speculation on my part, but I personally believe that he's likely still alive, and in the hands of these people. The only way to ensure his safe return, if that's still possible, is by putting overwhelming attention on this case so that the authorities don't let Jonathan slip through the cracks. Anyway, I hope to have a meaningful update on Jonathan's case at some point in the near future. There's a long stretch of asphalt traversing the Hungarian plains, connecting cities and economies. It's called Main Road 4. But between 2007 and 2010, this ordinary national highway became something else entirely. The chilling reality is that a lone predator turned this critical transportation corridor into a systematic hunting ground, targeting vulnerable women who sought a living on the outskirts of society. The case of the Main Road 4 killer represents one of Hungary's most perplexing modern cold cases, involving multiple confirmed killings and at least one disappearance. Also, apologies in advance to anyone who speaks Hungarian, because I can assure you, I'll be mispronouncing every name to some degree, despite my best efforts. The victims associated with the Route 4 series share a common denominator. They were women engaged in illicit work along the highway, placing them squarely in a high-risk demographic. This inherent vulnerability played directly into the perpetrator's operational strategy, allowing him to select targets whose movements might not be immediately tracked. This also allowed him to easily get the victims into his vehicle without raising too much suspicion of a truly serious crime. The earliest known case involved a 34-year-old woman, identified only by her last name, Zoltan. She vanished in late summer 2007. As she was estranged from her family, her disappearance went unreported for several months, and her remains were eventually recovered in 2011. The violence intensified in 2010. A woman identified as Paraska, 24 years old, was slain on June 19, 2010. Disturbingly, she was a known regular along the highway, and someone had seen her alive just 15 minutes prior to the discovery of her body. 2 months later, on August 20th, 2010, 24-year-old Erzsébet was killed after leaving a local bar or nightclub. Her body was found the next day in a water ditch along the highway. The final known incident involved an 18-year-old named Angela, who disappeared on May 22, 2010, near Kharkag, also along the highway. A witness saw her entering a vehicle described as red or maroon, heading toward the city of Debrecen. Notably, all the attacks are believed to have occurred on a weekend, which suggested to the cops that the predator was constrained by his job duties from Monday to Friday. Hungarian criminal profilers were brought in to create a psychological portrait of the serial predator. Their findings suggested the victims were symbolic, serving as proxies onto whom the killer displaced rage, stemming from rejection experienced with women in his life. The analysis indicated the violence was intrinsically about the desire for dominance and revenge. According to this profile, he likely had the appearance of a normal life, despite the disturbing acts he routinely committed. They also agreed that he was almost certainly gainfully employed and likely wouldn't have any meaningful gaps in his employment history. He was also believed to live somewhere close to the highway and may have traveled along this route during his Monday to Friday commute. This may have been the time when he singled out the women he would ultimately target, and he may also have engaged in stalking behaviors on the weekend before striking. Despite the completion of this profile, this would ultimately bring the authorities no closer to cracking the case. Perhaps the most telling and frustrating piece of evidence in the case is the sudden stop after August 2010. Since a serial predator's actions are driven by overwhelming, constant psychological needs, it's highly improbable that the individual voluntarily stopped. An offender driven by such intense and deranged pathology rarely ceases activity unless they find a replacement behavior or are externally blocked. The abrupt end to the series of attacks strongly suggested an external involuntary situation prevented the continuation of his predatory behavior, at least according to officials. Investigators generated four primary theories to account for this silence, which are honestly just a list of everything that could have possibly happened. They speculated that he died, suffered a debilitating injury or serious illness, was incarcerated for an unrelated crime, or left the region or country permanently. That said, I do think it's possible that he stopped, and my evidence for this is that his attack on Angela was his last known crime. During that attack, someone saw his vehicle and got a description, which may have spooked the predator. His self-preservation instincts may have caused him to be one of the rare cases where a predator can simply stop his deranged spree. Despite the detailed behavioral profile and extensive efforts, the case of the Main Road 4 killer remains unsolved, with no suspects having been named. Unfortunately, it appears that no forensic evidence tied to the perpetrator was discovered at any of the crime scenes, which further complicates solving this crime. But even if his genetic material was discovered, cutting-edge techniques like forensic genetic genealogy just generally don't work in Europe for a variety of reasons. The primary one is European Union privacy laws, but also there's just much less reason for a Hungarian to seek out an ancestry test. After all, if all your Hungarian great-grandparents came from your Hungarian village, you're going to be much less inclined to pay a few $100 to find out you're Hungarian. Or maybe I'm totally misreading the situation and Hungarians are desperate to know that they're an eighth German or something. Hey everyone, just a quick reminder to click the share button and send this video to your friends and family. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube membership or the Patreon. You can support for as little as $1 a month. You're hiking deep in the Japanese countryside, far from any paved road, when you stumble upon a snake unlike any you've ever seen. It's too thick, its body swelling to the size of a bread loaf or a bottle. Before you can react, this reptile stands vertically on its tail, takes an impossible 15-foot leap toward you, and then, inexplicably, rolls away like a wheel. This is the Tsuchinoko, perhaps Japan's most sought-after and biologically confusing cryptid, a being that defies conventional biology, yet commands national attention. For centuries, it has captured the national imagination, prompting serious expeditions and large bounties from legitimate institutions. To understand why this creature maintains such a powerful hold on modern Japan, it's necessary to explore its deep historical roots and discuss what witnesses have seen. The creature's identity is inextricably linked to its distinctive shape. Unlike a typical snake that tapers gradually, the Tsuchinoko is described as having a long body, but with a center girth dramatically wider than its head or tail. The sheer proliferation of regional names across Japan speaks to the widespread nature of the phenomenon. While Tsuchinoko is the dominant term in Western Japan, it's known by over 50 different aliases nationwide. My personal favorite regional variant is Tsuchi Korobi, which literally translates to tumbles in the dirt. The fact that geographically disparate regions independently developed unique names for the creature suggests something fundamental. There may have been something consistently observable that has been encountered for generations. Unlike many cryptid-type creatures, the mythological lineage of this supposed animal is ancient, stretching back to the Jomon period over 2,500 years ago. Pottery and stone tools feature motifs resembling stumpy snakes, establishing that this unusual form has been part of Japanese cultural memory for millennia. Compounding the mystery, folklore dictates several features that fundamentally distinguish the Tsuchinoko from true snakes. It's consistently reported to possess eyelids, a trait absent in most serpents but present in lizards. Furthermore, observers across different eras agree that the creature is highly venomous, bearing fangs similar to a viper, which reinforces its dangerous reputation. Witnesses recount a series of movement patterns that defy known herpetological mechanics. It reportedly moves in an inchworm fashion, can roll sideways like a log, or even tumble end over end. Its speed is often cited as astonishing, leaving observers baffled by its rapid disappearance. The most sensational descriptions involve two specific behaviors. First is its extraordinary agility, especially its jumping capability, which is said to cover distances of up to 15 feet. According to some accounts, it even appears to have unlocked a double jump ability, leaping again while airborne. The other is, of course, its purported ability to swallow its own tail and form a rigid loop that allows it to roll away at great speed. Beyond its bizarre movements, the lore assigns the Tsuchinoko a peculiar personality. It's said to produce a sharp squealing sound, and is even reported to snore loudly while it slumbers. Adding an element of comedy, legend claims it can speak. Unfortunately, everything it says is a lie, unless you get it drunk, at which point it becomes compelled to tell the truth. But it won't just drink any swill you toss in front of it. This snake demands high-quality rice wine. The Tsuchinoko transitioned into a national obsession during the late 1980s, when a wave of purported sightings erupted across Japan. In 1988, one local government launched a formal Tsuchinoko expedition to prove the creature's existence in their region. This wasn't just an idle way of drumming up tourist dollars. They actually funded zoologists to search for the animal, though as you may have guessed, they slithered back up empty-handed. Or perhaps in this situation, maybe they contorted themselves into hoops and rolled back. The officials then launched a campaign to reward any independent snake hunters who could capture a live specimen. The initial reward was the equivalent of $8,000 in 1988, but over the years this amount has grown substantially. At present, the reward for capturing the creature alive and unharmed sits at 20 million yen, or about $125,000. So if you're planning on doing a trip to Japan anytime soon, you may want to swing by a Tsuchinoko-rich area in hopes of funding your travels, and then some. While it's generally accepted by everyone at this point that the creature is more folklore than fact, the ancient and widespread nature of the tale has attracted significant theories. For biologists, the task is to rationalize the Tsuchinoko's reported shape and behavior using known fauna. The prevailing theories generally fall into two categories: misidentification of native species and confusion with escaped exotic pets. The first, most immediate explanation involves the misidentification of native Japanese venomous snakes. These species are common in the alleged habitats and are known to cause human fatalities, rationally explaining the consistent reports of viper-like fangs and potent venom. However, neither of these native snakes possesses the extreme girth reported by witnesses to be consistent across centuries. They also don't snore or roll up into a hoop, and though I haven't been able to confirm this, I'm fairly certain they don't drink or speak any human languages. The most compelling modern hypothesis concerns the blue-tongued skink. This reptile, native to Australia and Indonesia, is frequently kept in the exotic pet trade worldwide. Crucially, the skink offers a near-perfect physical match to the Tsuchinoko's core attribute. It is short, thick, distinctively wide-bodied, and has a noticeably separate head and tail. The chronological alignment of this animal's introduction to Japan provides the strongest supporting evidence for this theory. Blue-tongued skinks first entered the Japanese pet market in the 1970s, which directly preceded the explosive wave of sightings that peaked in the late 1980s. As intelligent reptiles with long lifespans, escaped skinks could easily establish persistent small populations. From there, they could startle observers who mistakenly identified them with the mythological Tsuchinoko. And if you're one of those people who just listen, Take a look at this creature and imagine it's in the tall grass where you can't see its stubby little legs. To me, it looks virtually identical to the descriptions of the Tsuchinoko, especially at a quick glance. My own theory is that someone a couple millennia ago encountered a native viper mid-digestion, its body grotesquely swollen around a recent meal. In poor light, the proportions would look wrong, almost impossible, and fear would do the rest. That single image, a fat, dangerous snake frozen in memory, could seed a story that spread, mutated, and hardened into folklore. Over generations, each retelling exaggerated motion, speed, and intelligence, until the Tsuchinoko became something else. Then, in the late 20th century, the fuse was reignited. Escaped blue-tongued skinks, abandoned pets with stubby legs hidden in grass and thick bodies, matched the ancient description just well enough to validate the myth. Old stories met real escaped animals and belief, and a little bit of mass hysteria took hold and did the rest. On a brisk October night in 2007, 22-year-old Charlie Allen, a senior at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, vanished without a trace. In the days leading up to his disappearance, Charlie's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He had stopped taking his bipolar disorder medication over the summer and began expressing paranoid fears that people were out to get him. On October 11th, 2007, he called his sister Brittany in a panic, insisting that he wasn't safe and that she needed to leave school because people were after both of them. That same night, he left his parents strange, breathless voicemails saying he planned to flee to Texas or Florida. These were the last communications anyone received from Charlie Allen, and by the next morning, he had disappeared. That Thursday had begun unremarkably. Earlier on October 11th, Charlie had lunch plans with his father and played a routine afternoon tennis match with a friend, even inviting him to a party planned for later that night. But Charlie never showed up for that 8:30 p.m. meetup. In the wake of his panicked phone calls and the sudden silence of his cell phone, his family grew alarmed and alerted the university and police that he was missing. Then, in the pre-dawn hours of October 13th, 2007, a possible sighting provided a chilling clue. At roughly 3 a.m., a Dartmouth resident reported that a young man had tried to climb into her second-story bedroom window. The intruder matched Charlie's description, and when confronted, he apologized, claimed he was looking for a friend, and then jumped out the window and ran into the nearby woods. Despite the weird and inherently threatening circumstances, the young man was extremely polite and as non-threatening as he could be, given the situation. Police responding to the scene later discovered Charlie's backpack discarded in the woods near campus, filled with his school notebooks and personal items. They also found a pair of sneakers believed to be his, left behind near the house where the break-in occurred. Soon afterward, Charlie's 1999 Ford Expedition was located parked on the UMass Dartmouth campus. It appeared he had been sleeping in the vehicle in the days prior. However, there was no sign of Charlie himself. His keys, wallet, and cell phone were missing and have never been recovered. Further, it wasn't clear if he had injured himself when he jumped out of that second-story window, assuming it was in fact him. Authorities launched an intensive search of the area. Sniffer dogs traced Charlie's scent through the woods, and police teams combed the campus, nearby forests, and local homeless shelters and hotels for any trace of the 22-year-old. After 2 weeks of exhaustive efforts, with no new evidence to follow, the official local search was suspended on October 27, 2007. Investigators believed that Charlie's disappearance was likely the result of a mental health crisis rather than foul play. One investigator came out early in the case and advised that it was being treated as a vulnerable missing person situation rather than a crime. Indeed, a review of Charlie's computer and records turned up no indications of any threats or conflicts that might explain his fearful statements before he vanished. In the immediate aftermath of Charlie's disappearance, police followed every lead they could find. Dozens of reported sightings poured in from the public. Some people even claimed to have spotted a young man matching Charlie's description talking to a truck driver. This particular tip fueled speculation that Charlie might have hitchhiked out of New England, perhaps heading south toward the warm climates he mentioned in his voicemails. This was investigated, but it proved nearly impossible to verify the supposed truck ride without more specific evidence. The authorities periodically researched the woods where he was last seen, returning even years later to examine the swampy area, yet every search effort turned up empty. Over time, as leads grew cold, active ground searches tapered off. Still, the case was never closed, and the mystery continued to haunt both Charlie's family and the investigators who had hit a wall. Then, there was a sudden potential break in the case in January 2021. A fragment of a human skull was discovered on a Dartmouth beach, and it appeared to have been there for some time. Investigators collected DNA from Charlie's parents to check against the remains, but despite hopes, this was confirmed not to be from him. In 2022, 15 years after Charlie's disappearance, law enforcement renewed their focus on the case. The Bristol County District Attorney's Office added Charlie Allen's file to a newly expanded cold case unit project aimed at re-examining long-term missing persons cases. The DA expressed hope that advances in forensic DNA technology and genetic genealogy could provide a fresh lead where earlier efforts had failed. However, as yet, there have been no further updates on the case, suggesting that no John Doe has matched to the Allen family. Over the years, several theories have emerged to explain what might have happened to Charlie Allen. One straightforward possibility is that Charlie, in the throes of a psychotic episode, simply ran until he could go no further and tragically succumbed to the elements. Perhaps, disoriented and half-dressed on that chilly night, he wandered into a remote spot and perished from exposure not long after disappearing. Under this theory, he may have seriously injured himself after the second-floor jump, complicating his ability to survive in the woods. This theory would align with the absence of any contact or confirmed sightings after the initial incident. Indeed, many believe he may have perished somewhere in the woods around campus, with his remains just never found in the difficult terrain. Investigators conducted multiple searches over the years to test this hypothesis, even revisiting swampy areas as conditions changed, but they found no trace of Charlie's body. Another theory suggests that Charlie intentionally vanished to start a new life. His former roommate noted that Charlie was well connected to friends online and spent a lot of time chatting with these friends. As it turns out, Charlie had been a fairly major figure in the early days of competitive Half-Life and had a network of friends across North America and the world. If he truly believed powerful people were after him, it's conceivable he went into hiding deliberately. Supporters of this theory point to the numerous unconfirmed sightings of Charlie reported in various states over the years. They also note that just a month before, Charlie had legally changed his name to the unusual moniker Neo Babson Maximus, ostensibly so he would stand out in the pro tennis world. In hindsight, that decision, made while he was off his medication, could hint at grandiose plans or an attempt at reinventing himself. However, a little digging revealed that this was the gamer tag he used back in the day, so the choice perhaps isn't as odd as is usually portrayed. That said, of course, the fact that he made the decision while off his medication unfortunately doesn't bode well at all. Under the voluntary disappearance scenario, Charlie might still be alive today, living off the grid or under an assumed identity. However, if that's the case, it's unclear why he never resurfaced or contacted his family in the many years since. Charlie had a strong relationship with his family, and they were the people he reached out to when he believed his life was in danger. It remains a real possibility that Charlie may still be alive and homeless, having never gotten the mental health help he desperately needed. That said, this is generally viewed as unlikely, since bipolar mania eventually fades out. Put simply, it's generally not a permanent state, and when he came down, he would have likely attempted to reach out to his family. Charlie's family members have wrestled with these possibilities and tend to suspect that something more nefarious might have occurred. They find it hard to imagine him willingly cutting off all contact unless he felt he had no other choice. In this theory, Charlie may have encountered foul play, whether at the hands of someone he knew or a stranger he crossed paths with while vulnerable. One angle that was explored was Charlie's involvement in the online gaming community. There was talk that he might have gotten, quote unquote, in over his head with another gamer or provoked the wrong person. There are documented cases of such things happening, though generally this has occurred as the result of disputes over items in MMOs. And as a quick aside for non-gamers, these are massively multiplayer online role-playing games with persistent worlds. Basically think World of Warcraft. When police dug into the online gaming dispute possibility, they found no evidence of any grudges or dangerous feuds in his life at the time, or at any other point. Investigators couldn't confirm that any of the adversaries Charlie thought existed were real. In the absence of evidence, most believe these ideas were the result of his then untreated mental health issues.